Number 9. Black Sea Shipwreck. While exploring the waters off the coast of Bulgaria in 2018, scientists from the Black Sea Maritime Archaeology Project, or MAP, spotted a shockingly intact shipwreck. By then, the team had already seen at least 60 other sunken vessels, but this one stood out among the others because of how incredibly well preserved it was. It sits over a mile below the surface in what's known as the anoxic layer of the sea, where there is less oxygen in the water. Physical and chemical decay happen much more slowly at extreme depths, which is why the ship is in such great condition despite being an estimated 2,400 years old. It's not the most ancient submerged vessel in the region, but it's the only known ship of its age that contains a preserved mast, rowing benches, and other features that are not normally seen in wrecks from that time period. The ancient boat resembles the vessel seen in Greek artwork, offering a hint about its possible origins. A portion of the wreck was raised and radiocarbon dated to the 5th century BC, when Greek city-states and Mediterranean colonies frequently traded along the Black Sea coast. While little is known about the ship itself, its pristine state is giving experts an unprecedented glimpse back in time. Number 8. Ancient Hunting Bow. In 2022, National Park Service employees discovered a centuries-old hunting bow lying in 2 feet of water in Alaska's Lake Clark National Park and Reserve. Radiocarbon dating revealed that the bow is around 460 years old and that it was made sometime between 1506 and 1660. But where the bow comes from is an even bigger question than its age. It was found in south-central Alaska, on lands where the ancestors of the indigenous Dena'ina people once lived. Yet the bow may not be of Dena'ina regions. Researchers consulted with local elders and compared it with similar objects found around the same time, and the bow appears to have more in common with artifacts that were crafted by the Yupik and Alutiiq cultures. The Dena'ina interacted with other indigenous groups in the region, including the Yupik, which could explain how the bow ended up on Dena'ina ancestral lands. At the last update, experts were still working to determine where the bow came from. They sought the help of wood identification expert Dr. Priscilla Morris, who believes that the bow is made from spruce. To know for sure, she'd have to examine a cut fragment of the artifact under a microscope, but the NPS wants to keep it intact because it's a rare discovery for the region, so the team may have to rely on less invasive clues to get to the bottom of the mystery. Number 7. The Guerrero. The Spanish slave ship Guerrero was a former privateer vessel originally called the James Monroe that served during the War of 1812. But its history is largely shrouded in mystery. During the 1820s, the slave trade was illegal in Cuba, which is where the Guerrero primarily did business. To evade authorities, most ships that transported slaves to the island were eventually destroyed or renamed between runs. As a result, most have been lost to history. The Guerrero was heavily armed. At 110 feet long and 14 12-pounder guns and a crew of 90 men, the ship was most likely not only involved in the slave trade, but also most likely a pirate ship. While sailing from Africa to Havana in December of 1827 with 561 African captives aboard, the Guerrero caught the attention of the British anti-slavery patrol ship HMS Nimble in the Florida Straits. The Nimble fired a few warning shots, signaling that its crew planned to inspect the Guerrero, but the Guerrero's captain hightailed it, sparking a 5-hour chase that ended with both ships crashing on a reef off Key Largo. The collision tore into the slave ship's hull and toppled its masts. As the Guerrero sank, 41 of the African captives it was carrying drowned. 20 of the crewmen and 142 of the captives were rescued by a fishing boat called the Florida, which the crew proceeded to hijack and sail to Cuba. Several crewmen also hijacked a schooner called the Thorn after being rescued and sailed it to Cuba with 246 captive Africans on board. The captives who ended up in Cuba were sold into slavery, while most of the remaining captives were returned to Africa. The Diving with a Purpose underwater archaeology program, which focuses on recovering shipwrecks with a focus on African diaspora, teamed up with the National Park Service and the National Association of Black Scuba Divers to participate in the search for the Guerrero. They located the wreck during their dives between 2010 and 2012. and have recovered early 19th century cologne bottles, bone china, lead shot, earthenware, metal rigging, copper fasteners, and wooden plank fragments. Number 6. The Port of Amathus. Built during the 3rd or 4th century BC, the port of Amathus was an artificial harbor located near the modern-day city of Limassol in southern Cyprus. According to experts, it was an impressive but short-lived project of the Hellenistic period, which may have never been completed. The site consists of 3 piers made from large carved rectangular stones, which were built to protect ships from strong winds. Today it sits 13 feet underwater and extends 328 feet from the shore. Sadly, it looks as though the ancient harbor was never actually used. By the 6th century AD, all of the city's residents had fled Amathus. Archaeologists think the exodus may have been triggered by Arab raids, but they admittedly aren't sure. Experts first investigated the site during the 1980s. In 2005, an artificial reef was established among the ruins, and it has greatly damaged the structures. Officials want to turn the site into an underwater park, and it's fueling tensions among environmentalists who are concerned about the proposed removal of a protected marine plant called Neptune grass and those who want to see the harbor preserved. Authorities have made it clear that they're pushing forward with the plans. They promised the public that they will protect both the Neptune grass, which is vital to aquatic ecosystems in the Mediterranean, and the submerged ruins. Number 5. Exploded warship. Sitting at a depth of 361 feet in the Aegean Sea, an old ship bears evidence that it was blown up before it sank to its watery grave. The 130-foot-long vessel's bow is missing, and the stern has collapsed. Shredded metal sheets were ejected from the sides of the ship, and the sea floor is scattered with debris as far as 100 feet away from the main wreck. The ship was discovered by divers in 2022 near the Greek island of Kithnos, where it came to rest pointing in a northerly direction. Its unique construction of closely spaced frame lines, no holes, and a low profile of just 10 feet in height bears elements of what expedition leader Costas Thocratitis described as a very old ship, possibly a warship. The team that discovered the vessel declined to speculate on its age or who it belonged to. Aside from very clear evidence that it was destroyed in a very strong explosion, its origins and story are a complete mystery. Dr. Roditis and his team hope to identify the ship through further research. Number 4. Mystery plane debris. While sailing off the St. Augustine, Florida coast in 2012 with plans to take photos of reefs for an interactive map he was creating, 31-year-old Joel Kistel's depth finder detected an object 80 feet below the surface. He dove to the site and observed metal parts and debris that he initially thought had perhaps fallen off a barge. They were actually plane parts, including 2 engines, an engine block, and a broken propeller. The wreckage may belong to an aircraft that disappeared 16 years earlier in 1996. 58-year-old Stuart Dunbar was flying his small plane alone from Georgia to his home in South Carolina when he put out a concerning distress call saying that he was dizzy and having vision problems. He vanished along with the aircraft, leaving his family without answers. Dunbar's daughter, Penny Malfris, told CNN that she believes her father steered the plane away from land to avoid hurting anyone when he realized he was having an emergency. When some local fishermen heard about the discovery, they took Kistel to another site 4 miles away where he found another aircraft. He broke off a piece of debris only to later notice that it had "Property of the U.S." written on it, indicating that it was a military aircraft. It also contained numbers that helped Kistel's family identify the plane as an A-7, last flown by a pilot named Robert Basal. As it turned out, Basal was still alive. He was 24 years old when he became disoriented and hit the fuselage of his commander's plane during a training flight in the 1970s. Basal told StAugustine.com that the plane lost power and flew out of control. He ejected and was rescued from the water, but said he wasn't exactly proud of the mishap and didn't talk about it much. In fact, he never told a lot of people about the accident, period. After Kistel rediscovered the aircraft, Basal decided to finally face the part of his past that he had tried so long to forget about. He visited the wreck site, and it seemed to help him finally come to terms with what happened. Number 3. The Churchill. In 2005, researchers discovered a 19th century wooden ship at French Frigate Shoals in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. 2 years later, in 2007, a team of scientists from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration visited the wreck in hopes of identifying it. Based on the ship's features, they concluded that it was most likely the Churchill, a four-masted schooner that ran aground on a reef in 1917 while sailing from Tonga to Seattle. The wreck's size and dimensions were also consistent with the 178-foot-long ship. Built in North Bend, Oregon in 1900, the 1,600-ton Churchill's design was typical of the large wooden schooners that dominated American shipping in the Pacific between the Civil War and World War I. When it ran aground, it was carrying a cargo of copra, or dried coconut meat. Luckily, all 12 crew members were rescued by a nearby fishing boat. They accused the captain, Charles Granzo, of deliberately destroying the ship, and he was charged with espionage. The disgruntled sailors claimed that Granzo wanted to remain aboard the Churchill even after it was apparent that they would only survive if they got into lifeboats. It's unclear what became of the matter. After exploring the wreck, NOAA marine archaeologists admitted that they can't say with certainty that it is the Churchill, but all signs point towards it. Number 2. Ancient offerings. Located along the modern-day border between Bolivia and Peru, Lake Titicaca was one of the ancient Inca's most sacred sites. The once powerful civilization considered the lake to be their place of origin, and its significance increased dramatically during the 16th and 17th centuries. Many artifacts have been found at the site that speak to its importance. During an underwater survey a few years ago, archaeologists discovered a small box. Measuring just 14 by 10 and 6.5 inches, the container is made from a locally sourced volcanic stone called andesite. The artifact was retrieved from 18 feet below the water surface, where it had sat undisturbed for more than 5 centuries. It contained a llama figurine made from a rare and valuable coral shell, as well as a small rolled sheet of gold. Researchers believe that the items were immersed into the lake as part of a ritualistic offering to the Inca gods. The box is just one of numerous discoveries at Lake Titicaca that were likely deposited as part of a spiritual ceremony. Over 24 stone boxes have been recovered from another part of the lake, while the contents of only 4 were found intact. They contained offerings including figurines of male and female humans, as well as llamas made from precious metals and other valuable materials. Christopher Dallaire, who co-authored a study of the artifacts, told National Geographic that the offerings contained requests of varying amounts and contexts, including political and agricultural pleadings. He also said that the Inca who lived along Lake Titicaca were likely influenced by previous cultures, such as the Tiwanaku, who inhabited the area between 200 BC and 1000 AD. But the exact meanings and the dynamics behind the offerings are admittedly up for debate among experts who are still trying to interpret them. Number 1. The Breadalbane. Captain John Franklin was one of many European explorers who competed to find a polar sea route linking the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, known as the Northwest Passage. In 1845, he set sail on his mission with a 129-member crew and 2 ships, the HMS Erebus and the HMS Terror. 2 months into the voyage, the vessels became icebound in Canada's Victoria Strait. The crews remained on the ships for a year before they left on foot, despite having several years' worth of food on board. Over 100 search missions ensued over the following decade. In 1853, the British Royal Navy sent a Scottish-built merchant bark, the Breadalbane, to the high Arctic to resupply an expedition that was out searching for Franklin and his crew. The 3-masted ship made it all the way to Resolute Bay, roughly 500 miles above the Arctic Circle, without any major problems. Things took a horrifying turn one night when slow-moving ice surrounded the Breadalbane and pierced its starboard bow. The crew gathered as much equipment and belongings as they could carry and rushed off the ship as it became choked by the encroaching ice. It took less than 15 minutes for the vessel to disappear completely beneath the surface. Luckily, all 21 crew members survived and were soon rescued. The Breadalbane wreck was rediscovered in the Barrow Strait in 1980 at a depth of 330 feet. It's famous for being one of the world's northernmost shipwrecks and one of the most intact wooden saltwater wrecks ever found. Thanks to the dark and frigid conditions of the Arctic Sea, the sunken ship has sustained minimal damage over the years and is deteriorating much more slowly than a typical wooden vessel. Several artifacts have been brought to the surface for preservation and display, including the steering wheel.
9. Humber Forts. Built at the entrance of northern England's Humber estuary starting in 1914, the Humber Forts consist of two large fortifications known as the Bull Sand Fort and the Hale Sand Fort. Measuring more than 82 feet, 25 meters in diameter, each structure sits 59 feet or 18 meters above the water. The forts were built to house 200 soldiers each, but they never ended up being used during World War I as planned because they weren't finished until shortly after the conflict ended. They ended up proving useful during World War II when they were reactivated and modernized. During the war, the structures regularly took a beating from enemy aircraft. After the war, they no longer served a practical purpose, and in 1956, they were abandoned. The forts still stand today, and in 2022, Bull Sand Fort was auctioned off. Located roughly a mile and a half, 2.4 kilometers from shore, the four-story building's seaward side is covered in a foot, 300 millimeters of armor. It was listed at a starting price of £50,000 and was sold for £490,000. Hale Sand Fort, which is the smaller of the two buildings, is also privately owned by an unnamed buyer, who purchased it at an auction in 2018 for £117,000. It's unclear what the fort's owners plan to do with the properties, which are protected from demolition by law as historical sites. Past sellers have recommended repurposing the sites as homes, Airbnbs, restaurants, and tourist attractions. Whether any of these ideas come to fruition remains to be seen. 8. Lovelady Survival Bunker. Deep in the wilderness of Houston County, Texas, there's a 120-acre, 49-hectare property with a 1,000 square foot, 93-meter squared bunker with enough room to comfortably house 14 people. Hidden among the trees, the subterranean survival structure is protected by a steel outer door and impenetrable interior doors. The inside is basic, but contains a lot of conveniences that many bunkers lack, including access to well water, a fully functioning kitchen and dining space, and a large room that could be used as a common area or an extra bedroom. It could easily serve as a full-time home, but the property is also big enough for the owner to build houses on. The bunker is located 8 miles, 13 kilometers from the historic railway town of Lovelady, which is home to less than 600 people and is just a 20 to 30-minute drive from more populated areas. It's also in a secluded enough area for its occupants to live separately from the rest of the world if they wish to do so. It's been on the market since 2023 and has a current asking price of $1.1 million. 7. Evergreen Crystal Palace. Robert Plaster was an incredibly wealthy entrepreneur from Missouri who founded the energy supplier Empire Gas and numerous other enterprises. During the 90s, he had a 30,000 square foot, 2,787 meters squared mansion built on a large hill overlooking Table Rock Lake in Branson. Known as the Evergreen Crystal Palace, the 14-bedroom home contains a 20-car garage, a helicopter pad, multiple kitchens, housing quarters for live-in staff, a shooting range, and other luxurious amenities that most of us can only dream of having. Each bedroom is themed and decorated with expensive artwork from around the world. At one point in time, Evergreen Crystal Palace was the most expensive home ever built in Missouri. It remained in the family after Plaster passed away in 2008, but nobody currently lives there. In fact, the house looks like it hasn't been used since it was built, and it definitely hasn't been updated much since then. The decor, furniture, and appliances are visibly dated, but in spectacular condition. Everything looks brand new, making a walk through the mansion feel like a literal step back in time. The Plaster family decided to sell the home last year after the estate's trustee had a health scare. Real estate agent Ken Coleman came out of retirement to sell the mansion, which is on the market for $80 million. He invited YouTuber and urban explorer Big Banks to the property in hopes of attracting potential buyers. The marketing strategy appears to be helping. The day after the influencer's video launched, Coleman received 68 phone calls from interested parties. Robert Plaster was entirely self-made. He worked hard all his life and always made it a point to give back to the community. In honor of his giving spirit, proceeds from the sale will fund college scholarships. 6. Fort Wingate. Outside Gallup, New Mexico, there's an entire abandoned army base and a surrounding village that went up for sale for $11 million in 2021. Known as Fort Wingate, the 18-acre, 7.3-hectare settlement was founded in 1867. Before it became a military base, the property was part of the Navajo Nation and Zuni indigenous tribes' ancestral homeland. After living on the territory for centuries, the occupants were forcibly removed by the U.S. military. The land was redesignated as a reservation, and residents were eventually allowed to return. But they had no say in whether or not they agreed with the military base being built on their territory. Over the years, Fort Wingate went on to serve as a detention camp during the Mexican Revolution, an ordnance depot, and eventually a school. At one point, it was home to an African-American Army brigade called the Buffalo Soldiers. During World War II, the site housed the Navajo Code Talkers, who created a code based on the Navajo language. When the property went up for sale in 2021, it had been under the same family's ownership since 1946. During that time, the most recent owner was the town's landlord, police chief, and fire chief. Today, the former base contains both indigenous ruins and disused military buildings. It also has an old trading post, cafe, post office, convenience store, gas station, and hookups for 80 RVs. 5. The Golf Ball. Just 30 minutes outside the Scottish capital of Edinburgh, there's a former top-secret NATO spy base with a building that looks like a massive golf ball. Known as a SATCOM-2 satellite ground listening station. It was built on the decommissioned World War II airfield RAF Balado Bridge, which served as a training facility for Polish pilots during the conflict. The 60-foot-tall, 18.3-meter golf ball is what's known as a radome. Opened in 1985, it housed a satellite dish which was used for intercepting communications and picking up messages from aircraft. For 20 years, the dome's equipment picked up satellite correspondence, including Russian ballistic missile launch orders. A corridor built to withstand attacks of all types, including nuclear blasts, connected to the golf ball to a main equipment building. The property also had a mess hall, a recreation hall, 2 runways, a control tower, several garages and offices, and a guardhouse. It's surrounded by a burglar-proof, double-layered security fence, although it has seen its fair share of burglaries in the years since it became abandoned. Although the site wasn't officially decommissioned until 2006, it fell largely out of use during the mid-90s. From 1997 to 2014, it hosted an annual music festival. By then, the property had been purchased by an entrepreneur named Bob Ferguson. But he never did anything with it. And in 2014, it was back on the market. For the next 7 years, real estate agents did everything in their power to try attracting a buyer. At one point, the seller dropped the asking price from £950,000 to £650,000 in hopes of finally getting rid of the disused station. As of 2021, many parties had shown an interest in buying the 6-acre, 2.4-hectare site, but nobody had committed to becoming its new owner. Finally, in 2023, Aerospace Kinross proposed turning the property into an air and space museum. The project was approved, along with a 7-figure grant to put toward expenses, and it appears as though the site will finally be put back to use after years of languishing with an uncertain future. 4. Fort McClellan Barracks. Located near the city of Anniston, Alabama, Fort McClellan was first established as a military property during the early 20th century. During World War II, it served as one of the Army's largest installations. More than 500,000 troops trained there throughout the conflict. From 1975 until its closure in 1999, Fort McClellan served as the headquarters of the Military Police Corps and a military police training program. It was also home to the Chemical Corps School, which trained service members in chemical warfare, and a U.S. Border Patrol training facility. During this time period, roughly 10,000 military members were stationed at the base, which employed around 1,500 civilians. For many years after being decommissioned, the property underwent unexploded ordnance removal. Since 2010, a portion of the former base has been repurposed as a mixed-use community, while other parts are still being used for training by the Alabama Army National Guard. Much of the original site remains abandoned, including a 117-acre, 47.3-hectare parcel containing nearly 1 million square feet of old buildings, including Army barracks known as starships. In February 2023, this particular property was listed for sale for $1.5 million. Just a few months later, news outlets reported that an interested buyer was in the process of negotiating the site's purchase with the seller. Nearby residents who spoke with local station ABC 3340 said that they hope to see the property redeveloped in hopes that it will bring more activity to the area, which suddenly grew quiet when the military cleared out. 3. Lookout Mountain Radar Station. During the Cold War, 28 radar stations were established along the northern U.S. border with Canada. They were used for detecting any potential incoming aircraft or missiles from the Soviet Union. One of these remote sites, formerly known as Finland Air Force Station, is situated atop Lookout Mountain outside Finland, Minnesota. Located within the Superior National Forest, it's entirely surrounded by wilderness. The property was decommissioned more than 40 years ago in the early 1980s. It fell under private ownership with plans to redevelop it into a luxury home community, but the vision never came to fruition. While tearing down some of the old buildings and testing the septic system, the owner discovered contaminants in the water and ground. Decontaminating the site would be expensive, complicated, and time-consuming, and the project was abandoned. Today, many of the original buildings remain at the site, including 43 3- and 4-bedroom homes, which have started to deteriorate from neglect and vandalism. In 2022, the owner listed the property for sale in hopes of finding a buyer who has the desire to do more with it than they were able to do. Photos featured in the real estate listing show an eerie, crumbling road that leads to the site. Old buildings lined up silently along cracked pavement, the interiors of homes that have been all but forgotten, and an abandoned school. The 100-acre or 40.5-hectare site is currently listed as off-market, which suggests that it's been sold to a new buyer, whose future plans for the site are unclear. 2. Stack Rock Fort. Built in the early 1850s on an island in the Milford Haven waterway, Stack Rock Fort sits about 800 yards or 732 meters from the shoreline in the Welsh town of Pembroke Dock. Consisting of a 30-foot, 9.1-meter tower, nearly 10-foot thick, 3-meter walls, and 3 large cannons. Its original purpose was to protect the nearby Royal Dockyard from an attack by sea. Faced by the increasing threat of an invasion by the forces of French Emperor Napoleon III, the British military upgraded the fort during the 1860s. By 1870, it contained a new battery capable of accommodating up to 175 soldiers and 5 officers. Most of the time, however, the base was home to just 30 soldiers and 1 officer. The fort underwent improvements multiple times throughout its use, but it only saw combat during World War I. It was decommissioned and disarmed in 1929, and subsequently stripped of useful materials. Since then, Stack Rock Fort has sat abandoned and in an increasingly deteriorated state. Because it's classified as a protected historic property, however, it cannot be demolished, and any structural changes require special permission from the government. In 2021, a company called Anonium bought the property from a private owner with plans to preserve it as a living ruin. The company's director told Atlas Obscura that the goal is to maintain the air of discovery and magic that the overgrown fort has captured in its decades of abandonment, giving visitors the feeling that they're exploring it for the first time. 1. K.I. Sawyer Air Force Base. Located south of Marquette, Michigan, on the state's remote Upper Peninsula, the former K.I. Sawyer Air Force Base began as a local airport in 1937. After the U.S. entered World War II, the property was repurposed as a military base for protecting the nearby Sioux Locks. which facilitate travel between Lake Superior and the lower Great Lakes. In 1955, the property was taken over and expanded by the Air Force. It became home to a 12,366-foot-long, 300-foot-wide runway that was designed to quickly mobilize fighter jets. During the Cold War, the base was equipped for intercepting potential Soviet threats. Named after civil engineer Kenneth Ingalls Sawyer, the property operated under the military for 40 years until its closure in 1995. During its heyday, it was home to 12,000 people, making it the Upper Peninsula's largest city. The closure of the base negatively impacted the local economy. Today, the former base is home to the Upper Peninsula's busiest airport, but the rest of the site is abandoned. Included among the disused buildings are a hospital, dormitories, a bar and restaurant, post office, and a movie theater. In 2022, the property became available through a sealed bid auction. As of early 2024, it appears to still be available. 6. Underwater Sculpture Park, Grenada. If you dive under the water off the Caribbean paradise of Grenada, you might see something a little bit unsettling on the seafloor. Human bodies are standing up in the sand, their hands interlocked together to make a circle as if they're engaged in some sort of ritual. But before you call the police, you'll be relieved to learn that this is just a small part of the Grenada Underwater Sculpture Park. The first of its kind anywhere in the world, the park opened in 2006. But the artists behind the works have expertly crafted these 75 sculptures out of concrete and metal frames in such a way that it looks like they've been there for centuries, if not since ancient times. You may be wondering though, why did Jason Descartes Taylor decide that he was going to exhibit his works on the ocean floor rather than in a gallery? Well, Descartes Taylor created the Underwater Sculpture Park not only as a new and novel way to showcase his work, but also so that the statues could support conservation efforts in the area. Thanks to climate change, tourism, and other factors, the reefs around Grenada have been damaged significantly. So the sculptures help to provide a new habitat for the creatures and plant life that call the area home. Additionally, the proceeds raised by tourists visiting the sculpture park, whether by glass-bottomed boat, scuba, or snorkeling, could be used to further boost conservation efforts. Some of the most popular installations at the site include the one that we mentioned above of the children holding hands. With 26 of them in total, there are just as many theories as to the meaning of the artwork, called the vicissitudes, as there are statues. Some believe that they showed the unity of the Grenadian people, but others think they represented slaves who lost their lives after being thrown overboard, or that it showed the adaptability of children and future generations. While many ideas prevail, Descartes Taylor has never been definitive on what it actually stands for, allowing people to make up their own meanings. Troy Lewis is the man behind the Christ of the Deep, and this sculpture does have symbolic meaning behind it. It's a duplicate of the original artwork, which is situated along the waterfront of the Carénage in St. George's Harbor. The original piece was a gesture of appreciation to the people of Grenada for their kindness and generosity when they assisted 600 passengers and crew members of the Bianca Sea, which was tragically sank in the area in 1961. Christ of the Deep was built on the seabed to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the sinking. Another sculpture that's popular with divers is the Lost Correspondent. Referred to affectionately as the Newspaper Man, it depicts a man sitting at a table, seemingly hard at work on a typewriter. But with 75 different sculptures at the park, we wonder which one would be your favorite. 5. Cleopatra's Palace. Queen Cleopatra, the last queen of Egypt, was renowned for both her governance and her relationships with Roman leaders Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. However, just as famous as the queen herself was her palace. Located in the city of Alexandria on the coast of the Mediterranean, this ancient palace was an architectural marvel with elaborate pillars and statues. But the palace, along with much of the city and the famed lighthouse on the island of Pharos, one of the wonders of the ancient world, was lost when a tsunami and earthquake hit the region 1,400 years ago, leaving only texts from that time to let us know of its majesty. However, in a twist of fate in the 1990s, French archaeologist Frank Godiot uncovered ancient writings by the Greek historian Strabo, describing Alexandria and an island called Antirodos, which was the home to Cleopatra's palace. Determined to find this lost palace, Godiot's team embarked on a decade-long exploration of the sunken island of Antirodos. Guided by ancient descriptions, they discovered clues, including the wreckage of an ancient cargo ship and the remains of an ancient dock with impressive columns. And finally, in 1998, Godiot's team finally found the remnants of Cleopatra's palace. The underwater excavation revealed a treasure trove of intact artifacts, including coins, pottery, vases, statues, columns, and marble floors, unseen for nearly 2 millennia. Notable discoveries included 2 large granite sphinxes guarding the entrances of a temple, one identified as being modeled after Cleopatra's father, Ptolemy XII Auletes. Other finds included a grand statue of the Egyptian goddess Isis and a massive stone head believed to depict Caesarion, who was the son of Cleopatra and Julius Caesar. The wooden foundation of Cleopatra's palace, carbon dated to around 200 years before her birth, suggested that she inherited it from her family rather than building it herself. Now that the ruins have been discovered, anyone can dive to see the remnants of Cleopatra's sunken palace beneath the waters of Alexandria. What would you do if you discovered a sunken palace? Let us know in the comments down below. And don't forget to subscribe while you're at it. 4. Sunken City of Dwarka. Dwarka, an ancient Indian city, holds a prominent place in Hindu culture as the great and beautiful city of Krishna. According to Hindu writings, as Krishna departed Earth to join the spiritual world, the age of Kali commenced, leading to the submersion of Dwarka and its inhabitants beneath the sea. The ancient city of Dwarka remained lost, even though a new city grew up in its place, bringing devout followers of Hinduism from throughout the world. However, the fascination with the old city remained, and many investigations have taken place over the years to try to find remnants of it. Then, in the 1930s, the earliest documented evidence of the city was discovered. 50 long years later, between 1983 and 1990, archaeologists unearthed a fortified foundation that's believed to be the base upon which the ancient city walls stood along the riverbanks. Stone blocks, pillars, and irrigation systems were among the discoveries. However, the discovery drew skepticism from some historians regarding the dating of these objects, which proposed timelines spanning from 3000 to 1500 BC, all the way to the Middle Ages. Not all of the finds were as ancient as this, though, but this detail was still pretty interesting to archaeologists and historians. They found numerous stone anchors at the same depth, helping them to figure out more about Dwarka's role in the trade relations between India and Arabic regions during the 15th to 18th centuries. The realization that Dwarka may have been a crucial trade port in its heyday also brought up theories about how the city's name came about. Dwarka means door or gate in Sanskrit, which might give a clue about its past. Although the debate remains, Dwarka has turned up many fascinating clues as to this holy city's past and maritime importance to India. But it's anyone's guess as to when the true lost city will be found. 3. Pavlopetri. Pavlopetri is the world's oldest underwater town. Dating back over 5,000 years, this ancient site is also unique given the fact that it's one of the earliest known planned settlements anywhere in the world, helping us to learn more about our ancestors and the development of the Mediterranean. Found in the south of Greece, Pavlopetri was first found by Fulcian Negris in 1904. However, it wasn't until nearly 6 decades later that Nick Fleming from the University of Southampton in the UK stumbled upon the site. It was at this moment that the archaeological world truly grasped the awe-inspiring significance of this ancient location. In 2009, the University of Nottingham launched a 5-year research project. This initiative involved collaboration with the Hellenic Center for Marine Research and the Ephorate of Underwater Antiquities of the Greek Ministry of Culture and Tourism. The Pavlopetri Underwater Archaeological Project aimed to digitally scan the seabed and create a 3D reconstruction of the historic town, before its fragile remnants were lost due to environmental factors, including lack of protection, pollution, waves, currents, and tourism. The groundbreaking project utilized sonar mapping technology, marking Pavlopetri as the first underwater village to be digitally scanned in 3D. The powerful combination of cutting-edge marine science and movie industry computer graphics allowed for the creation of astonishingly realistic 3D digital reconstruction photos. These images allowed even those who can't dive down to see a glimpse at the ancient settlement. The archaeological findings at Pavlopetri offer a window into daily life between 3000 and 1100 BC, providing evidence of a well-planned city with streets, 2-story homes, cemeteries, gardens, temples, and an advanced water management system. The exceptionally preserved city stands out as a planned community despite being submerged. It's distinct from other older sunken sites worldwide, which grew more organically rather than being structured in anticipation of population growth. The layout of Pavlopetri, spanning 9 acres or 4 hectares, reflects a frozen moment of the past. But why put the effort into meticulously planning out the layout of Pavlopetri? Historically, the town served as a significant trade hub between the Mycenaean and Minoan civilizations. Artifacts such as large clay storage containers, statues, and common objects highlight its role in facilitating trade. While the original name and precise function of the ancient city remain unclear, Elias Spondylis of the Greek Ministry of Culture emphasizes its rarity and significance as an undisturbed, submerged site. 2. Great Blue Hole. The Great Blue Hole, situated approximately 60 miles or 100 kilometers off the coast of Belize, is a colossal underwater sinkhole that's believed to be the largest of its kind. Circular and boasting a rich blue hue, it spans over 930 feet or 300 meters in diameter and descends to a depth of 375 feet or 125 meters. Nestled within Lighthouse Reef Atoll, the surrounding shallow turquoise waters, encircled by a coral island, reveal parts of the ring even peeking out above the surface during low tide. With its striking dark blue center, surrounded by pristine aquamarine waters, the sheer size of the Great Blue Hole means it can even be seen from space. So how exactly did it form? Originating as a limestone cave during the last glacial period, when sea levels were lower, the sinkhole formed as rising oceans flooded and eventually collapsed the cave system. A vertical cave emerged in the ocean, with its depth being the reason behind the Great Blue Hole's unique appearance, as sunlight cannot penetrate its deepest reaches. Although known to the people of Belize for centuries, the Great Blue Hole was made famous by renowned undersea explorer Jacques Cousteau in 1971, who named it one of the world's top 10 diving locations. His exploration confirmed the sinkhole's origin and revealed massive stalactites and stalagmites, some reaching 27 to 36 feet or 9 to 12 meters in length. The Great Blue Hole is a popular diving destination year-round, with many divers having it on their bucket list of places to dive. Thanks to increases in scuba technology, divers today can witness intricate geological formations with clearer waters and more complex structures at greater depths. Recognized as part of the Belize Barrier Reef Reserve System and a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the Great Blue Hole stands as a captivating natural wonder. 1. Uluburun Shipwreck. The Uluburun Shipwreck, an archaeological marvel off the coast of Uluburun near Kos in southwestern Turkey, has unveiled a rich tapestry of history dating back 3,300 years. Discovered in 1982 by local sponge diver Mehmed Sakir, the shipwreck is considered to be one of the oldest and most fascinating maritime discoveries anywhere in the world. The ship, measuring a staggering 49 feet or 15 meters in length, is a testament to Bronze Age shipbuilding techniques. Resting at a depth ranging from 144 to 200 feet, 44 to 61 meters, the Uluburun shipwreck's artifacts were scattered across a steep rocky slope, presenting an enormous archaeological challenge. Excavations spanning 11 consecutive campaigns from 1984 to 1992 were conducted by the Institute of Nautical Archaeology, encompassing an impressive 22,413 dives. But why would they want to dive down to the wreck so much? To answer that, what makes Uluburun extraordinary is not just its age, but the sheer amount of artifacts that have been recovered from it. Over 18,000 of them, to be more exact. This treasure trove is a diverse array of items, from precious jewels to utilitarian tools, offering a fascinating and in-depth snapshot of ancient life and trade routes. The cargo, exceeding 20 tons, 20,000 kilograms, is believed to have been a royal order, showcasing the ship's pivotal role in facilitating international trade. The shipwreck's cargo represents a melting pot of cultures, with artifacts traceable to at least 7 different civilizations. Among the notable findings are 354 ingots of Cypriot copper, constituting around 10 tons, 10,000 kilograms of the main cargo. The ship also carried the earliest known intact ingots of glass, 175 in total, displaying vibrant colors like cobalt blue, turquoise, and a unique lavender. Raw materials such as terebinth resin stored in Canaanite jars, logs of Egyptian ebony, and ivory cosmetic containers add to the diversity of the cargo. Many people might think that the Bronze Age was a time of isolationism for many newly developing countries. But the Uluburun shipwreck proves that international relations and trade were still going on. The luxurious items recovered from the Uluburun also show the wealth and extravagance of the rich elites of the time. Egyptian gold, silver, electrum, and stone objects, along with the Canaanite jewelry, adorn the collection. Thousands of beads made from glass, agate, carnelian, quartz, faience, and amber, as well as finely crafted figurines, contribute to the wealth of the ship's cargo, which also includes a bronze female statuette partly clad in gold. Notably, a scarab bearing the cartouche of Queen Nefertiti stands out as one of the most unique and precious items found on the ship. In 2022, new revelations added another layer to the story of Uluburun. A team of scientists from Washington University in St. Louis discovered that Highland pastoralists in present-day Uzbekistan contributed a significant portion of the tin found aboard the ship. This tin, destined for the Mediterranean markets, was a crucial component in the production of bronze, a popular metal in the ancient world. The Uluburun shipwreck isn't merely an archaeological site, it's a window into the past that continues to provide valuable insights. Ongoing research aims to identify and study all the objects recovered from the ship, contributing to our understanding of the ancient world. The shipwreck's significance extends beyond the sheer monetary value of the items found inside, and now it serves as a testament to the intricate trade networks, cultural exchanges, and technological advancements that characterize the Bronze Age Mediterranean. Which one of these underwater finds did you think was the most impressive? Let us know in the comments down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this one. Bye.